my baby.
I'm Dana Denha.
And I am Melissa Bondi, and this is Adventures in Parenthood, where we take a ride on the roller coaster that we call parenting.
Deciding to become a parent is a huge responsibility, and with it comes plenty of risk and reward. With science and technology improving modern medicine, we now know better ways of understanding autism spectrum disorders. And with that knowledge, we're able to help those with ASD live a fulfilling life. But education is key. We actually have a neighbor that has autism. So Keaton has known someone with autism since before she could even remember anything. So it's a pretty normal thing. She doesn't even question it. Have you guys encountered anyone where, you have to explain to Bryn that maybe someone's actions are a little different than someone else's?
So we haven't in the child in regards to like children. We really haven't yet. There's been some cases I can think of the last couple of years, maybe in a store where an adult, you would know that the adult is, there was something different about them. And I've had to explain to her there. But I'm going to just, obviously I think I'm going to experience it soon now that, my daughter's in school. So we probably will, but as of right now, I don't know that she has with any kids around her age yet.
Well, when I was researching this interview, one of the stats is 1 in 54 8-year-olds have a spectrum disorder. So that is, you're going to encounter quite a few people in elementary school then.
Yeah.
That's a lot of kids. That's a big percentage when you put a lot of kids into one big building. They're going to encounter kids with spectrum disorders, and you want them to know that these kids they can be friends with too. And that's where I think it's important to just like, if they ask questions, to just be really honest about what's going on. And I find, it wasn't a stance I decided I wanted to take with Keaton, but I think that it's just, as a parent, you never know what kind of parent you're going to be. And I'm just like a really like straightforward, honest parent. So like when I tell her stuff, I talk to her like I would talk to you and tell her like, this is it. This is what's happening. And then I say, do you understand? And then if she doesn't, I try to explain it again in a different way,
right,
where she's going to understand it better.
Yeah. And that's absolutely how you're supposed to do it, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, you think so. So yeah. And I just think it is important. I don't think you need to be bringing it up all the time, but like when it does happen, if Keaton says, why does our neighbor make those noises all the time when he's swimming in its pool? I would be like, I would just explain it in a way where she knows that Josh is still a really cool kid and that she can really hang out with him if she wants to,
Absolutely.
So on that note, let's meet our next guest. Joining us is board member of the Autism Society of Michigan, Kathy Bergh. Welcome to the show, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Hello.
So first, I would like to know about your story. You have a special story. You have a long history with autism. So I would like to know a little bit more about you and what brought you here today.
Okay. Well, I have a son who is going to be 34 next month, and he has been diagnosed with autism. When he was diagnosed with autism was not as well known, if you want to say that. We have grown so much in what we are aware of as a country, as a people. So awareness of autism has come so far than when it did, when autism happened to us. And that is how the psychologist explained it to us when Mark was diagnosed, is that it is a neurological biological disorder. And it was already there that he would become autistic when something happened to him. And for him, it was just lots and lots of ear infections.
So there are triggers. It's like something in your body, but there's a trigger that makes it sort of come to the forefront.
Right. And for every person, that trigger is going to be different. And he kind of explained it as an odd, like you said, for us, a physical trigger.
So your son is 34. Does it happen at any age, or is it typically young children that most people associate with?
If you're higher up on the spectrum, and autism is a spectrum disorder, that diagnosis may come later in life, but you should be able to pinpoint it way back. When you go back and look, that onset of autism is going to happen somewhere between birth and about 2 or 3. For us, it didn't hit till Mark was about 1.5 years. Okay. And then and when it happened, it happened little by little. And for us, we kind of see it as he just kind of kept stepping back and stepping back and stepping back. And the timing of that in our family, Mark is our second born of our 3 children. Our third born was happening. So here is this child that developed pretty typically. And I was one of those crazy moms that kept a calendar, those developmental calendars.
Oh, yeah.
What's going to happen now? And did he or she hit that milestone? And oh my goodness, and stickers and everything. So in hindsight, that was wonderful, because when we went back for his diagnosis, I had a calendar. I had some data to be able to say, whoa, and again, that didn't make sense until later. Things that we hadn't looked for or didn't see right away. And like I said, to be honest, I had a pretty typical, I hate to use normal, we're going to use the word typical if I can. I'm going to try to use typical instead. Typical developing little guy. He was this, like I said, second born of my firstborn is a son also, and very talkative. And he spoke for our Mark, which is very also very typical, which was a problem when he was diagnosed, is that firstborn was talking for my secondborn. Mark was a little bit slower with his language, but all in all, fitting in that normal, as we would say, developmental hierarchy. He did pretty well. Right,
you mentioned something when you first, like around the time that he was getting diagnosed, about 1.5, 2, that he was taking steps back. So he developmentally had sort of went further, and then he was taking steps back. And that was the part that sort of was a red flag for you to say.
Sure. And, I'm going to say that he was showing the signs of autism when he was 1.5. He was not diagnosed until he was 4.
Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those things in hindsight, you can always look back and say, oh, now that I know.
Oh, baby.
And it is interesting that you mentioned 34 years ago too, because I'm a 38-year-old woman. And when I think about when I was in elementary school, I can't think of one person that was said to have autism at that time.
Right.
And I think it's just a testament to how far technology has come and how, research has come with autism, because I think that there is this common misconception, I think, with autism, that it didn't exist before, and that it's something that now is like all these kids have it now. And it's like, it's always existed. It's always been there. And that's why you do hear now about, like, Melissa asked about age range and when people are diagnosed. You will hear about grown-ups being diagnosed now, because people didn't know what that was.
We took our concern when it looked like, and for Mark, I guess it was mostly language. And I think most moms of children who are going to be diagnosed with autism, feel like there's something a little bit off. And with Mark, like I said, there wasn't at first, but it was mostly language. His behavior really wasn't that different till the hindsight again, where he only had a few words. And then when he would get a new word, we felt like a word would fall off his plate, like he could only hold 5 or 6 words. And then as soon as he learned a new one would fall off. And I look back and think, well, that's interesting. Okay. And then now I'm holding a brand new baby, and I've got a not quite 2-year-old who's like beginning to now want to play a little bit more by himself. And hindsight too, how a child with autism might play with something looks different too.
Mm.
Like instead of building with blocks, he stacked them or lined them up. Little cars he would line up instead of playing and pretending. He would line
It
up.
was almost like a rhythm to it, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, rhythm and patterns.
Yeah.
Mark likes to live in rhythm and patterns. Yes.
Do you think people sometimes mistake or confuse or OCD? Like, where's OCD? If you hear that more, I think in adults, but
Sure.
is there a correlation between OCD and autism?
There are many disorders that may occur with autism because it's neurological. I jotted it down. Anxiety, ADHD,
Okay.
seizure disorder. For us, that seizure disorder did come to into our lives, into Mark's life. I wish I would have known it was coming, I think, but I might have been a little scared too, to be honest. That came, and if it comes with people with autism, it most often will come like at puberty because there's a big change at that time. For Mark, that's what happened. He does have difficulty with seizures, and
Still to this day too.
oh yeah.
What is Mark like now? You know, he lives with you still.
Yes, he does.
And, you know, I think a big thing about autism, I have a neighbor who's autistic and I just love him. He's so precious to me, Josh. He does. I mean, he speaks a little bit, but he is just like he's so sweet. He's like one of the sweetest boys I've ever known. And he's sort of becoming a man now, you know, he's like 13, so he's growing up. But, you know, I don't know if Josh will ever be able to live on his own. I don't know what his life looks like for him, but what does your son's life look like? Because, you know, I'm sure you're happy to have him with you too. Because my daughter doesn't have any autism or anything like that, but I'm like, you can live with me forever. You can stay in my house forever.
Well, most of the time that's true.
Yeah.
Mark is, I'd say, still dependent on people and dependent on someone, and will always be dependent on someone. Mark still, I joke with, and I say joke in whatever fashion you want to take, you know, Mark's safety for walking across the street has been on his IEP since he was 4. It's still there in the plan that we work through with our county mental health, because he's aged out of school at this point, being almost 34-year-old. He doesn't have much language. He did have some language. He was able to use words and phrases taught kind of in a script kind of way, not very conversational, which also is very autistic. But when his seizures came and seizure meds came into our life, we lost the language. And that was very, very, very disheartening for me, for us, because it felt like that's something we worked really hard on since he was little. And pairing, we learned a little bit of sign language to be able to, you know, and I know very, very little, to help give him a visual cue for words. And we just learned phrases. You know, he used to be able to say, we would give him this little I, which that's a signal for I. And he would say, and we'd say, I want, and he would be able to say, I want Doritos in a chips, you know, Doritos in a bowl, please, Mom. And after some of the seizures and the language, I mean, he just looked at us. I could give him the cue and he'd just look at me. He could not pull the language. So that's still an issue for us, is he still can't pull the language. What we say is that when you ask him a question, yes means yes. 50% of the time, he knows that when you ask a question, he hears that in your voice, but he doesn't always know what to say. So yes means yes some of the time, no means no 98% of the time. So we really try to accept that when there is a no, and honor that, because he is trying to tell us something.
Good. I mean, he has his boundaries.
Volume.
He's got his boundaries. And he's able to tell you no when it means no.
Right.
So on that, we're going to take just a quick break.
Okay.
We're going to get some words of wisdom from our local sensei as we kick it with Keith Hafner.
Hi, I'm Keith Hafner from Keith Hafner's Karate on Main Street in downtown Ann Arbor. You know, if I came over to your house and dropped in and said that you were a lousy athlete or a lousy neighbor or a lousy nurse, attorney, taxi cab driver, I don't think it would bother you all that much. And here's why. As grown-ups, we've got a filtering mechanism in our head that allows us to receive information and then sort it out. This is good, this is not good. And you would hear that information from me, you would hear that feedback and say, Hafner doesn't know what he's talking about. I am so a good athlete. And you would discard what I said. With kids, especially at the youngest ages, they have no filter. And this is really important to understand and pay attention to, because they receive all information, all feedback, as though it is absolutely 100% true. And because they believe it, it informs how they act. It informs what they do. And so this means you've got to be very careful about what kind of input your kids are getting. Sometimes things that are accidentally said to them go in and become true even if they weren't true in the beginning. A kid might hear that he's not good at math, or he's not as smart as his sister, or that he's not a good athlete. And he will receive that without filter. It becomes true, and then his actions become congruent with that. So first of all, make sure that you're seeding positive image messages into your kid. But understand that you've got to be very diligent in helping them acquire their own filters. Help them to understand that not all the information that comes their way is going to be 100% true. And sometimes there will be things that are true now, but don't have to continue to be true into the future.
We're back with Kathy, and Kathy was just telling us about her son, Mark, and, his boundaries and stuff. But a really big thing about, living with spectrum disorders is finding a community of people that you can talk to. Kathy, talk about this. It was a long time ago. I'm sure the community was very small 30, 40 years ago, and it's a lot bigger now.
It certainly is, and I'm really glad about that, mostly just because of acceptance and being able to, for the most part, go out in society. And someone may look at Mark and, if you look at him, he is a big guy. He's 6 foot tall and he's 200 pounds. And if you look at his face, he looks like a typical person. If you see him around and he's flapping because he's excited, or he's flapping because he's angry, he's going to look different. And you get those glances from people that are kind of like, oh, I don't know what to think about that. So I am appreciative that now people are more aware. When he was younger, I had those people who stared at me when he was chewing. I had one person I'm in in Meyer, it happened to be Meyer, and he was chewing on a balloon, because for him, sensory kind of, getting that input was helping him deal with all the lights and all the people and all the things. And some person goes, did you know that that's dangerous? And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, he just came from therapy and he got that balloon in therapy. You don't understand. So now I feel like at least that understanding is kind of there. Acceptance is slower in coming. You still, even in our most sacred places like church, you still get people looking at you like, how come he can't be quiet? How come, because Mark is a hummer. And so you'll hear him, just every so often. I don't even hear it. I'll have people like look around and I'm thinking, what are they looking at?
So funny. Yeah, that's the same thing. My neighbor does that too. He makes a lot of humming noises and stuff like that. And it's like just part of the outside world to me. I don't even notice it. I honestly don't even notice it anymore. It's just like part of our street.
It's very helpful if you don't know where he is, and you can kind of tune and go, I know he's still here.
So Kathy, with the organization of Michigan, the Autism, what do you feel is your the biggest contributor? What made you feel some sense of ease, or sense of belonging, or you have people that can relate with you? I can relate with organizations too, when I know someone is similar, has something similar, to what I have or what I go through, or, whatever it may be. It's a nice comforting feeling.
Right, right. And like I said, for me, it started because I needed information. And so I'm a special educator. I was when I went to school a long time ago. That was what I wanted to do. It was my heart before Mark was even in the picture, is that I wanted to be a special educator. You know, what I learned about how many years ago that I went to school, you know, autism isn't what we thought it is now. You know, I mean, we, like you said, Dana, we've learned an awful lot. And at that point, Mark didn't look anything like any of that. But my husband and I, he's also a former educator, we needed information. When we found out finally, because it took us over a year to get Mark's diagnosis, it was like, okay, now we have an answer. Now we need some information. Now we have a plan. Before we were just kind of lost with this child we didn't understand. We knew it didn't fit in. We knew something was up, but it took, we had to eliminate things, and it takes a long time. And every time we would get to an appointment, we'd eliminate, oh, well, it's not that. And then 3 months later, you get your next appointment and you get to go here. And, you know, we knew it was a language problem. So we started with some language therapy, and that wasn't the only thing. You know, and so it was a slower process. So for me, coming to I knew about the organization. I found out about the organization because I was looking for information. And so I went to conferences, and that's how I was mostly involved until 10 or so years ago. Someone on the board who also happened to be alongside us when we went through that process. Her name is Jane White, and she sits on the board now too. And she asked if I would be willing to serve. And I guess I needed a way to say thank you. And so I serve as a parent of a child with autism. Many of us on the board are parents of a child with autism. Some of us have just that interest. Some of us have almost always somebody that you know, because otherwise, why do you want to be interested in autism? It's because of the connection, you know, back to that. You meet somebody and go, wow, that's interesting. I want to know more. So I sit on the board because I want to serve. I want to pay back. I want to be able to help this organization stay afloat. You know, that's one of the things now, budget cuts and whatnot. You know, we are mostly, like I said, an information and resource guide. We have a website where you can get information, and you can always talk to our staff person, Kathy Gladstone. And she's a wonderful human connection. I mean, and that's what it says, making human connections. And she will listen and she will refer. And that's what we're about.
All right, well, we're going to be back in exactly 60 seconds with more on the Autism Society of Michigan.
Welcome back, Kathy. So we were talking about the Autism Society of Michigan. So talk to us a little bit about the education portion of it. We've got a couple minutes, and I know there's so much to fit in, but take it away.
That information is going to be able to come to you on, you know, through a web page on, you know, over technology. I really feel like the best way to learn about autism is probably from that person, if that person speaks, if not somebody who knows them. what I used to do, and I'm not just saying this is what all parents should do, because I have that background of special education, I asked if I could go into all of Mark's classrooms, like from the time he was in kindergarten through fifth grade. And I went in and spoke to the kids, because it's important for those who are interacting with that person with autism. What do I do? What happens when he does this? I was able to help them understand that if he got angry, and when Mark was young, he would kick or hit. If you were in line and you got too close to him, or something bothered him, he might push you. When he's getting like that, I would try to explain to them, you need to give him space. You don't need to come and cuddle him. He doesn't want that. I spent the most time kind of telling a little bit about autism, telling them what they might see about Mark that would be different. But the biggest part to me was, these are the ways he's like you. Do you like Disney? Do you like movies? Do you like puzzles? And that's what I did with the kids. And that information time changed as they got older. I could give more facts. I could help them maybe with how to interact with him, and let them know that it's okay if you didn't want to be his friend, but if you wanted to be his friend, this is what you might be able to do. This is how he might want to play or interact, or he's probably not going to talk to you, but he'll listen to you. And it was fun for me to get back in the classroom, because at that time I wasn't in the classroom, but it was important for the kids to know, because he also, when he was in a classroom, he had an aide. He had, a person, a one-on-one aide with him, an adult. And I'm sure kids are like, why is she here? Let them know that she was there to help, and that, you could talk to her if you needed to, they want to know.
I think that's so great that you did that for Mark, because I think you have to be their advocate. People need to understand, if they're going to be around Mark all the time, they need to understand what he's like. You don't want him to feel isolated in school either, right? You want him to feel welcome.
Yes. Right. And did he, the little girls like to be around him. He was accepted. He got to be on the stage and do the singing when the kids did the singing in the concerts.
Oh, I love that. I love it.
Oh my goodness. It was wonderful. Those bring back really, really good memories.
Oh, Kathy, I can tell you are such an amazing mother, honestly.
I'm
you don't need to roll your eyes about it. I know you are. I can tell just by talking to you that you are a really great mother to all three of your kids. And it is not easy to have to, you knew that Mark was going to be with you forever. You knew that you're going to have to take care of him forever. And you were up, you did it, you stood up, and you're happy to do it. Obviously there's hard days and there's better days, but you're doing it. And I can tell how passionate you are about it. And that I'm very grateful that you are bringing the word out to people, to know that people like Mark or people like Josh, my neighbor, are amazing people that you should take a minute to spend some time with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope I helped a little.
Oh, you definitely did.
You did. This is great information, and we loved your story. Definitely, Kathy.
Thanks.
If you have an idea for a parenting show topic or guest, talk to us on Twitter and Facebook at #CTN Ann Arbor.
For more on our programming and services, visit a2gov.org/CTN and visit youtube.com/CTN Ann Arbor to watch our full lineup. And remember to subscribe and to share. Thanks for joining us on this adventure in parenthood.